Right, so in the previous video I have implemented these JWT decoding stuff and JWT related checkings, and now let's try to implement that password related token checking, right? So what I was going to do in the previous video, I was going to check whether the password is changed once the token is issued or not, right? Because if the password is changed, then we shouldn't let other tokens to access our resources, right? So we have to basically check that functionality as well. So yeah, in order to implement such things, what we can do is we can specify another field inside our user model to record the last password change time, right? So let's create another field called password changed at, and this is the date format, right? So this field basically record the last time that we have changed our password, right? So the typical place that we can impose this logic at initially is the saving our user schema, right? Because in the savings, first we need to store the default password changed time as the time that is created this account, right? And later on, if we are going to implement a forgot password options and reset password options, then again this password change that field will be updated, right? So what we can do is that we can specify that logic inside this pre-query middleware, but yeah, for demonstration purposes, I will implement another function that is going to bind with this specific middleware, which is again a pre-save query middleware function, right? So let's say use schema and pre, and again this function will be called before savings, and the function follows the middleware fashion, and it will point to this as next. And initially we have to set our password change stat as the date.now, right? And if you set up your password changing at time like this, it will be quite okay. But in the practical scenarios, due to this server performance and token issuing stuff, it will be having some sort of a delay for saving your account and the issuing the token, right? So in order to distinguish those times, what we can do is that basically we can reduce, or we can remove some sort of value from this date time, right? So let's say I'm going to remove 1 millisecond from the date now, right? Then those server performance will be concern, no issues at saving our passwords and stuff, right? Otherwise, later on we will be encounter several issues. Okay, but right now it works correctly, I think. And if you check your database model, currently you can see that there is no password change at record. So let me delete this out, and let's try to sign up a new user. Okay, and we have this user. So it returned this password change at time as well, which means it works correctly. and it will return this new token, right? Because we have to use this new token to now gain the access. So get all post, and let's try to invoke this, but it simply says user is not exist because this token is now not valid, right? But if I replace this token and send it again, it will simply return the necessary post back to the user, because now that user is exist, right? And you can see that password change time is also saved. Now we can use this logic to check the password change time and the token issued time. Yeah, so let me uncomment this function again. So what we were working on, this token availability check, right? So first we have to check the password change time is exist or not, and we have to obtain a timestamp by passing this specific value, right? Because this is stored in the date time format, and we have to obtain it as a timestamp format. So let me have a variable called maybe changed, let's say password changed at timestamp, and we have to pass the int with the password changed at, and we have to obtain the time, and we have to divide it by 10, right? Divided by 1000, because this time is taken as milliseconds, so we need it in seconds. And if you are going to look at this function signature, you can see that the second parameter is the radix, which means you have to enter the base format. So we need in the decimal format, so I mentioned it as 10, right? Otherwise, if you mention it in maybe 8 or 16 or something like that, it will be in octa or hexadecimal format, right? But now we need our timestamp as in a decimal format, because the JWT timestamps also in the decimal format. Then once we have that specific timestamp, what we can do is that we can check whether our JWT timestamp is shorter than the password change timestamp. So which means if this is true, it says that the password has been not changed before the JWT issuing, right? Or we can say that, or the JWT is issued once the latest, after the latest password change, right? After the latest password change. Then the users with old password won't be able to log into the account, right? So won't be able to log into the resources. If they want to log into the resources, then they have to log in and obtain a new token, right? That is the logic behind that. And if it is not password change, it is not specified, it will simply return false, which means either way you have to log in again, right? So that's the logic that I wanted to construct. And yeah, so let's go to this auth controller again, and this is the way we post the previous video. So I will uncomment that specific field, and I will use that method which is what was it, token availability check, right? So I have to check, so I have to pass decoded issued at time, right? Issued at time. So if you remember that decoded data structure, it was a JSON object that has this token and the issued at time and the expiration time. So we have to pass the issued at time to perform that specific token availability checking. And if this is not passed, so we can invoke an error function or an error object by simply saying user has changed the password, and let's say please log in again, and this is 401, right? So yeah, in case if the token is expired before the password change, it will return this specific error. And if it has no errors, it will simply grant the access to the user, right? So basically you don't need to return anything, because it simply grant the simply grant the access to the user, to the specific resource, right? Because it has passed all of these constraints. But later on, maybe we can implement role-based authentication stuffs as well. Therefore, it is quite good to have our user object inside these protected resource calls. So I will bind our user as a user request with that specific resource call. So the current user will be bind like this. Alright, so that's the entire protect route workflow. So let me try to log in again. Yeah, so it simply says user has changed the password, please log in again. And let's try to log in again. Okay, now we have a new password, and let's replace it over there and send it again. Yeah, it still says yeah, it is not correct. And why is that? So I have passed the decoded issued that time, okay, and the token availability check. Let me check that out as well. Okay, so this works, and the password changed that time also there. Okay, get time. Okay, maybe let's try to log this specific value, JWT timestamp, and password change that timestamp, and call the API. Let's go over there. Okay, I think, okay, so the password changed at time. Okay, it is also recorded, and JWT timestamp is less than this password change at time. Okay, so what if we interchange this stuff? Then let's try to invoke the API again. Okay. Alright, so I debugged the issue. Basically, we have to simply put this notation over there, right? Because if the token is not available, right, availability check is not passed, then it must return this error, right? Otherwise, if this token availability check is passed, we shouldn't return this error, right? So the previous logic was there, right? Nothing was changed. This is the user model, and we don't need these loggings. So the logic was same as before, right? So this checking is there, returning false is there, but simply you have to put this exclamation mark at this checking, right? Then if it is not available, or if the availability check is not has been passed, then it will simply say user has changed the password or something like that. And if I try to re-invoke that API again, okay, now it says, oh, it simply return the post, all the post for us. So likewise, now we have a complete protected route authentication middleware. So you can bind this method with any sort of routes that is mentioned inside your route files, something like this, right? So I think I can use this protect route for all of these stuffs. So I will simply bind that middleware function like this. So everything is now protected. But let's say getting all the post is not protected, then I can simply remove it like this. Then when I am trying to use that specific route, now I don't need these sort of authentication headers, right? So if I disable it and try to send it, yeah, it works. But in case if I enable this protected route, and if I not mention my authorization headers, it will say, okay, you have to have that access in the JWT. So yeah, I think we have to switch our production modes as well. So let me node environment the production mode as well, and let me restart the server, and yeah, let's try to resend it again. Yeah, it says something went wrong, but if I specify the authorization, yeah, it grant me the access, right? So that's the entire workflow, and I think we are almost done with the authorization, but yeah, we can have more features in the next episodes. We can discuss more features in the next episodes, right? So yeah, thank you, and I'll see you again.